This is a tutorial on how to loom knit a goat, and I'm going to show how to do a seinen, and I'll try to incorporate adjustments for other breeds in my blog, but we're going to learn to do the seinen first. Okay, what you want to do is you want to draw a string cast on 24 pegs and working flat. You want to E-wrap 24 pegs for 6 rows, as you see that I've done here. And you'll notice that it's flat, it's completely open, and this is pretty standard for me in my stuffed animals for the back of the head. So go ahead and do that. And I'm using 3 strands of worsted yarn, but you can use a bulky yarn to do this project. So what I'm going to do is E-wrap 4, and then I'm going to prep to do my first ear. There. Now on the next 4 is where we're going to be working with our ear. So you want to E-wrap 4 for 2 rows, then on the 3rd row you're going to E-wrap those 4, and then you're going to increase by 1. So you want to increase by 1, wrapping the next peg. Go ahead and E-wrap the 4 again. I've about worn this loom out. Don't touch that one. Wrap the next peg over to increase again, and then you want to E-wrap 5 this time rather than the 4. And you're going to toss that bottom loop over on the increased peg, but not the original loop. If you do the original loop, you attach the head with the middle of the ear. So make sure on those increased pegs you do not toss that original loop that was on over. So go ahead and you want to E-wrap 6 for 4 rows, and then you want to E-wrap 4 for 3. So this is our first row of E-wrapping 6. You want to make sure you don't touch that original loop on that increased peg. Okay, now you want to do your 4 pegs in the middle. You want to E-wrap 3 rows of that. Keep in mind this is the back side of the ear, and if you're wanting to change the color at that point you can, if you're doing another breed or whatever. or wanting to do one that looks like a goat out in your pasture, this is the back side of the ear. Now you want to E-wrap 2 for 3 rows. At this point, you're reaching the tip. After you do those 3 rows, if you want to do a pink inner ear, you'll want to change the color at that point. So you'll want to change the color after this row to another color. So we're going to go back to our 4 pegs and we're going to E-wrap those for 3 rows. Again, at this point you'd want to change to another color. This is, if you want to do pink instead, just want to give you a heads up. And then you want to E-wrap 6 for 4 rows. Remember not to touch the original loop on those increased pegs. And on my blog I'll try to put in the written for what it would be for a Nubian for the long-eared goat. I've pretty much worn this loom out. The pegs don't even want to stay in there real well. Okay, at this point you want to decrease those increased loops back down to your original 4 pegs. So decrease on each end on there. And then you want to E-wrap those 4 pegs five more times. And you've now just finished your first ear. If you're uncomfortable with this next step, you can skip it and just sew the ear up after you've completed the head. But if you're like me, you want to kind of close it off and maybe not have to worry about sewing it up later. What you want to do is bring your original loops back on. And I'm not going to do this real technical. I'm going to go with the spaces in between the original loops to make it easier to just kind of pop those back on. And it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference whether you're getting the actual loop itself or the space in between the loops, just so long as you're bringing it back doing the spaces in between the actual loops makes it really easy to pull back. So go ahead and toss those bottom loops over to get back down to one loop on those 4 pegs, and you'll have completed your ear. So there's your ear, and at this point you'll want it to have changed your color back to white, and you can, if you have hornless goats, you can skip this section and just E-wrap 8 to the next ear. But if you have horns, you want to change your color to the horn color you want. I'm going to do a tan color. It's up to you. You can choose to add this section or not. So go ahead and attach your horn color. Again, if you don't want horns, you'll want to E-wrap 8 and do the next ear. Okay, after you do that, change the color. You don't have to cut the white, you can keep it attached. You want to E-wrap the next 4 pegs for a total of 8 rows. If you want the horns shorter, you just do, say, maybe 5 rows rather than 8 rows, or 4 rows rather than 8 rows to get shorter horns. It's entirely up to you. This is just generally showing you how to go about creating a goat with your loom so that you have the chance to customize it to your preferences. Now you want to E-wrap 3, then E-wrap 2 for 3 rows. This is the tip of the horn. Then you want to E-wrap 3, and then you want to E-wrap 4 for 8 rows. Actually, E-wrap 4 for 10 rows, sorry. And the reason why we're doing the second half a little longer than the first is to allow it to add a more of a curve back. It's not straight up. If you want the horn to stand straight up and even, then you do E-wrap 8 rows. But I want mine to kind of be able to curve back. So that's the reason why I'm increasing the front end of the horn more. Now we've just completed our horn, as you can see. And this next step you don't have to do if you're not comfortable with bringing your original loops back on. But again, I intend on sewing up the horn anyway, but I like making it snug so that you have less likely of holes showing up that you have to fill in when you go to sew up. So I'm going to go ahead and put my original loops back on, or of course the spaces in between the original loops, to make it a little easier and not such a struggle. It's not 100% proper, but it does work. Go ahead and you'll want to toss the bottom loops over. And then you'll want to E-wrap, pick up your white and E-wrap those 4. Now we've just done half of the loom. You want to repeat exactly what we just did on the other half, but you want to start with the horn first, then the ear, and then E-wrap the rest of the way back. So at this point you want to start to reverse, do the next horn and the next 4, and then you want to do your ear and the next 4 after that, and then you'll want to E-wrap back to your starting point. So do the first half on the second half in reverse. So you'll want to go ahead and pause the video to complete the row. After you finish the ear row, you'll want to E-wrap 24 pegs for 6 rows to do the front of the face. I have went ahead and done that, so you can see there's the ears and everything that will need to be sewn in, and there's your horns. And then I've gone ahead and I've E-wrapped flat for 6 rows to do the front of the face, as you can see there. Now we're going to create our snout area. So what we want to do is we want to decrease by 5 on each side. We're not going to do a complete internal decrease, but we're going to do a decrease of 5 on each side. So there's 1 and 2. 3, 4, and 5. You'll want to do that same thing on both sides. So, as you can see, you'll have an empty every other peg. Now what I like to do is go in and E-wrap only the pegs with loops on them. And this is the easiest way I've found about going and decreasing. Go ahead and toss both loops over the top. And then what I do is I bring all those loops together and I put them temporarily on the hook, starting from the far end and moving towards the other end. And then we're going to place them side by side back on to the loom. And if you're working with 3 strands, you want to make sure that all the strands are on there. The reason being is you're going to have to tighten these loops so that it's nice and snug for your snout indentation to be really nice. So this is kind of important if you're working with 3 strands to make sure all the strands get on there. Okay, at this point you want to go ahead and tighten up your loops. And this is an important step here. Reason being is when you tighten up your loops, you create more of an indentation in your snout area. Now you'll want to repeat this on the other side. So let's go on the other side and decrease by 5. There's 1. 2. 3. 4. And 5. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to E-wrap all the way to the other side, and I'm going to E-wrap those decreased pegs with loops on them and skip the ones that are empty. And I'm going to go ahead and toss both those loops over on those decreased pegs. And toss the in-between pegs, which is 4 in between your 5 decrease. Bring those loops together like we did on the other side. And put them right beside each other or back on the loom. And then you'll want to tighten your loops up so that you have a nice beautiful indentation for your snout. And now you've just created your snout area. So what you want to do is you want to E-wrap 14 pegs for 7 rows. Then you'll draw string cast off. So continue as you were, 7 more rows, back and forth, and then you want to draw string cast off. So go ahead and pause the video and we'll complete that. Now that we've completed, we want to do some sewing up, and what you want to do is you want to sew up the snout area, but you want to sew up the horns, and then you'll want to sew up the ears, and you want to close off the back of the head, and then you'll want to sew up the snout to the base of where you started decreasing, and you'll know it because you'll see an indentation, so you want to sew to the indentation. And then you'll want to close off the back of the head. And if you've watched of my other videos on this, to really properly close it, you'll need to do like the little clock, 3, 12, 9, 6 kind of thing to close it off completely. And you want to stuff. We're going to start on the body next, and I'm going to have 5 rows done. And what I've done is a drawstring cast on of all 24 pegs, and I've done that for 5, E-wrapped for 5 rows, and I've done it circularly rather than flat, so there's no space. At this point we're going to start purling, and you're going to purl 10 pegs. And then we're going to stop, and we're going to start on the tail. Now this is the back side area in case you want to do it a different color. So this is the bottom area, and we're going to start the tail in the next 4 pegs. You're going to E-wrap 4 for 4 rows, and this is going to be the bottom side of the tail, so that if you want to change different color to the other side of the tail, I'll let you know when to change the color. Now you want to E-wrap 3 after this. And then you'll want to E-wrap 2 for 3 rows. And this is your point. And if you want to change the color, I would suggest doing it right now to another color, whether it be black or brown. And then you want to E-wrap 3, because this is the other side of the tail. Okay, and you've just completed your tail. And again, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, if you're not comfortable with this, but I'm going to bring my original loops back onto the pegs so that I don't have to worry about sewing up, if I don't want to, the tail. And I go ahead and I toss those bottom loops over to get it back down to 1 loop on each peg. And then you want to purl the rest of the way back after this. So there's your tail. And now you'll want to purl the rest of the way back to your starting point. Okay, now that you've done that, you're going to go back to E-wrapping regularly, and you're going to do E-wrap 24 for 10 or 15 rows. If you want the longer body, which I did for the seinen, I did 15 rows. If you want a shorter body, do 10. Okay, so there's our tail, and there's the core of our body. And now you want to go ahead and E-wrap 10 pegs in. So yeah, go ahead and E-wrap 10 pegs in. And then we're going to skip the next peg, and we're going to move the loop next to that skipped loop back one, as you can see. And then we're going to E-wrap it. Now we're going to E-wrap 21 pegs to the other side, and at this point we're going to start working flat. What we're doing is we're creating that curvature in the chest area to start bringing the neck up. And basically you're stopping just before the last two pegs, because we're going to decrease like we did on the other side. Okay, and then you'll want to decrease in by one to the next peg. And then you'll want to E-wrap it. At this point, we're going to start working like a heel area, which is going to be the bottom of our chest area, and we're working flat for it. So what we want to do now is we want to E-wrap 16 pegs, and we're going to stop. Again, we're fixing to start working a heel area kind of thing. Okay, and we're going to start our wrap and turn. So wrap and turn the next peg, and then you want to E-wrap 10 pegs. Now we want to make sure not to touch our wrap and turn peg. Okay, now wrap and turn the next peg, and then E-wrap 9. Which should stop you just before your last wrap and turn, as you can see. Don't touch your wrap and turn. Alright, now we want to wrap and turn the next peg, and we're going to E-wrap 8. And it's stopping just before the last wrap and turn. Now we want to wrap and turn the next peg, and we want to E-wrap 7 pegs. And we're going to do this until we're down to 4 pegs with single loops in between our wrap and turn pegs. So you want to wrap and turn and E-wrap 6, which should leave you with 4 wrap and turns on each side. When you get down to your 4 single looped pegs in between your wrap and turns. Go ahead and wrap and turn and E-wrap 5. Wrap and turn, E-wrap 4. Going to wrap and turn one more time and E-wrap 4. So you see 4 on that side. We're going to get our 4th on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4. So go ahead and E-wrap those 4, and that's the first half. Now we're fixing to do the second half, where we start adding back in 1 peg at a time slowly. So you're going to E-wrap 5, tossing over the last wrap and turn you did. Now we're going to E-wrap 6, and then E-wrap 7, and then you want to E-wrap 8, and then you want to E-wrap 9, and you want to E-wrap 10, and you want to E-wrap 11, and then you want to E-wrap 17 back to your other side. Okay, at this point we want to create an indentation on the back of the neck, and so we're going to decrease by 3 on each end. So there's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. I like to go ahead and E-wrap the pegs with the loops. Toss both loops over the top. Bring all the loops together. And then you want to make sure that you tighten up your loops. And then you're going to E-wrap after you decrease by 3 on the other side. So there's 1. And this might be a little tough because you are stretching it a little bit to do this. And there's 2. And there's 3. Now, just like we did with the snout area, we're just going to E-wrap it all the way to the other side, skipping the empty pegs. So E-wrap 10, and then E-wrap those 3. Toss the bottom 2 loops over the top. After you do that, you'll want to go back and you'll want to bring those loops together, and then you'll want to tighten them. And we've just created an indentation in the back of the neck. Go ahead and tighten those loops up. And at this point, you'll want to just E-wrap straight. So you've just created your indentation. And now you want to E-wrap 16 pegs for 7 rows, and then you'll want to do just a regular cast off, whichever one you prefer, and then you're going to sew up the back of the neck and close the bottom area off. So go ahead and pause to complete, and we'll do the legs. Now when doing the legs, I'm not actually going to show it, I'm going to explain it. You're going to start off with your 10, and you're going to need a 12 peg loom. And you're going to need to do a drawstring cast on, and then you're going to E-wrap 2 regular rows of 12, and you're working circular, and then you're going to do a single purled row, and then you're going to change color to white, and then you're going to E-wrap 10 rows and then do a regular cast off, and you're going to want to make 4 of them, and you'll want to stuff them, and so that's how you do the legs. Really simple. So go ahead and pause the video to complete your legs, and then we'll work on assembling. Naturally, you want to sew your head on first, and you want to line the back of the head up with the tail, as you can see. And then you want to sew your legs on. This can be kind of tricky. The 4 loops we got down to, you'll see them, and you want to start sewing your leg on at that section right there. And then what you want to do is you want to line it up on that same row, and then you want to sew the outer edge of the back leg to the purled and in. So you can see there's your back leg and here's your front leg, and you're going to do this the same on both sides. Find your 4th, sew it from there, go to the end and sew it back from there for your back leg. And then you're done assembling it, and then you'll need to sew in or hot glue in your eyes depending on what you're doing. And I'm using some eyes I've made, and I am lining them up in between the horn and the ears and at the base of the snout, and you'll see it. You'll see the decrease. You'll want to line it up at the base of there and in between the horn and the ear, and you'll see it here. That's where you want to line it up at. Now for the beard, I'm using the scraps that I cut off for sewing on the parts of the body to make a beard. It's perfect for that. And what you want to do is you want to take 2 strands and you want to fold them in half, and then you want to take a crochet hook and then you want to weave them into the chin area of the beard of the goat. So go ahead and get your crochet hook, and you'll want to do 2 strands at a time, and you'll want to stick it through the loop like that. Pull the end that you folded in half through the loop, then you want to wrap it again and pull the rest of it through the loop that you just made. And you want to do this several times until you get the thickness and evenness you want for your beard. Just go ahead and stick the crochet hook through. Grab it with the loop you made, wrap, pull through the loop, and tighten. And then once you're done with that, you can go in and trim up the beard. You can make it as long or as short as you want. But you want to trim the beard. And when it's closest to the body is where you want it to be shorter. You can make it even, but it's usually longer at the nose area, at the mouth area, and shorter at the neck. Now to thicken up your beard so it's fluffier, you'll want to go in and separate the small strands of yarn from the whole, and this will make it fluffy and more hair-like. Just like that, and you want to do all the strands for your beard like that. And you may need to do another trim up after you're done. But after you do that, you're done with your goat. And if you want to see how to make other goats that aren't skeins, go to my blog, and I'll make sure to have as many notes as I can about different breeds and how to go about making them. But here is a skein.